Hello my friends, your old pal Jordan the Lion. How are you today? Well, I'm great, and when you're watching this vlog, I'll already be on my way to Italy. I decided to do an extra vlog as kind of a buffer day because I know that when I fly out, it's going to be a lot of flying and I'm probably not going to be able to film too much, and I don't want to be in a crunch to put something out, so I wanted to do something extra, and today I'm going to do the vlog that I've been trying to do for like the last 2 weeks. This is actually something that started out as a quasi-joke partying one night in Canada and turned into a honest-to-God phenomena and kind of reminded people how great the blues really was. Daze with Jordan the Lion begins now. Now what we're doing today is actually a filming location, but from the outside you actually wouldn't know that this movie was actually even filmed inside. So in 1980, Joliet Jake Blues and Elwood Blues, also known as John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, would make a absolute musical and comedy classic, and I do mean musical because it is a musical. There's so much music in there, I don't know how you couldn't call it a musical. Directed by John Landis, the classic Blues Brothers movie. And you would actually not know, like I said, that this was what it is, because the outside in the movie is the Palace Hotel Ballroom, located in Illinois, but they actually filmed the interiors here on Sunset Boulevard at the Hollywood Palladium. So of course I think probably everybody's seen this movie, and in the movie the boys are trying to raise money for the Penguin to help save the orphanage, and so they're going to do this big gig. The whole point of this movie is to make it to the big gig. This is the big gig, but I'm actually going to tell you how the Blues Brothers all came to be. We still have a big hat. We still have the big hat. Basically how the Blues Brothers all came to be was that in the 70s, Dan Aykroyd actually lived in Toronto. He was Canadian, of course. Most of us probably know that. And he was in Second City. He also had a kids show that he was hosting, and he owned a speakeasy called the 505 Club. John Belushi had come to Canada to try and recruit people for the National Lampoon Comedy Hour and was trying to get Dan Aykroyd to join. He didn't really want to join because he was already, as he said, making more money than the Canadian Prime Minister. He had a booming business with the speakeasy on television in Second City, and he had a pretty big chunk of Second City too because he helped arrange that deal. So he didn't want to do it. But John came back, they partied at the 505 Club that night. Dan Aykroyd started playing some blues records, reacquainting John with the music. At that time, John was really heavy into metal, big metalhead for the time, and Dan Aykroyd was a big blues guy. So they started playing this music together, listening to it, and the man who would eventually become the music director for the Saturday Night Live show was there that night and said, "You guys should call yourself the Blues Brothers." So jokingly, they said that they were going to, and believe it or not, they started putting together rehearsals. First what they did was they got one of Willie Nelson's backup bands and they started trying to come up with a set list and everything, and they were doing the warm-ups for Saturday Night Live. But this would soon take off because they were just too lovable, and they did one thing that was a really great move. Instead of hiring comedians to be the band, they went out and got some of the best studio musicians and some of the best live performers of the day. John Belushi, apparently at the time, his extent of listening to blues was pretty much the Allman Brothers Band and Lynyrd Skynyrd, and so Dan Aykroyd would kind of expose him, being a man who was from Chicago, John Belushi was, he would expose him to even more deeper blues, and then before you knew it, John Belushi was obsessed with it, and they started coming up with these personas. So they did these warm-up acts for Saturday Night Live. They went out and performed at a handful of little gigs and realized they could do this, and they got an episode, or they got one of their performances slated to be on Saturday Night Live, and it happened to be, good for them, a night that Carrie Fisher was hosting and Steve Martin was going to be there as a guest as well. Steve Martin saw their act, loved it so much that he asked them to be his opening act at Universal City. They did that and their career took off. Now what's interesting is that John Belushi would actually be one of the people that would hand assemble the band, along with Paul Shaffer, who was the musical director at the time for Saturday Night Live, and later would go on to be the musical director for a David Letterman show. So Paul Schaefer, the weird thing about that is he's the only one out of the whole group that wasn't allowed to be in the movie. Saturday Night Live, something in his contract would not allow it, so they actually had to get Bones Malone to come in and play keyboards for the movie. Now this group was perfect. It was just slated for success, and as Dan Aykroyd would say in interviews, it just kind of came at a time where there was a lull in music where people needed something like that. They needed that kind of entertainment, and so you had these two beloved comedians of the day, John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, portraying the frontmen of this group, and they took it so far as coming up with backstories for themselves. They really made it believable, and they were fun to watch. They were actually good singers, good performers, and they had a phenomenal band. They had Steve Cropper, Donald Duck Dunn, Paul Schaefer, but in the movie, like I said, Bones Malone. They had Willie the drummer. They had, who else didn't I say? Matt Guitar Murphy, and they had the trumpet section from Saturday Night Live. So in 1980, Dan Aykroyd wrote a 350-page script, put it in a telephone book, and delivered it to John Landis and said, "This is basically what I want our movie to be." And it was the entire backstory. He had written a backstory for not only Jake and Elwood, both, which is very textbook acting class. They always have you sit down and make an entire character sketch for the history of your character. So he went and did that not only for both of them, but for every member of the band, how they met him, how they knew him, why they were in the band, and delivered it. And John Landis said, "There's no way we can shoot this thing. It was a mess, but the ideas were there, and I could tell that it was just going to be huge." And I said, you know, with this kind of a story and everything going on, it has to be a musical. There has to be non-stop musical performances, and I think that's really what the success of this movie is. So in 1980, they filmed the entire end performance section here. That great moment when they do the Everybody Needs Somebody song, and then they go into Sweet Home Chicago, that was actually inside this theater. And this theater, I'm going to try and get in, looks exactly pretty much the same, other than I don't think it has the, there's a part in the movie where you see on the stage kind of a section that goes out into the crowd where the guys could go out and dance and everything. That you could tell was detachable even then. So in any of the shows I've been to, I've never seen that here. I could be wrong, but if in the event I can't get in, go back to one of my old vlogs and look up D. Antwoord, the band D. Antwoord. I came here and saw them, and I put a lot of the inside of this place on the vlog. So that movie was a huge success, and knowing that this was filmed here and knowing that John Belushi would eventually die in this city, I just thought this was a great place to come show you. Let's go over and take a closer look. So if I can take you back to the movie, imagine that stage with Cab Calloway introducing the boys, them sheepishly walking out here while all the law enforcement and the hillbillies from the Hillbilly Bar are here waiting for them. Carrie Fisher. Now they were so successful, I kid you not, that performance they did with Steve Martin was recorded, and they released a live album, and for a long time that album was one of the most, if not the most successful and best-selling album of the blues of all time. Which is kind of funny to think about. It wasn't like these guys had, you know, dreamed of doing this their whole life, being in a blues band from the time they were kids. This was a made-up storyline with a made-up band. You gotta love it. That just shows, you know, how great entertainment can be when you can bridge the gaps. That's an ancient picture. I mean, that's probably, I would guess, 40s inside the Palladium. Everybody's in there dancing. But even in this, you can see the columns that are on the stage that are in the shot when they're up there performing. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this was actually done as an open call, like an open casting call, so anybody that was in the area that wanted to be an extra and be in the audience for this performance could be here. I can't recommend Briefcase Full of Blues enough. When I was in high school, a couple of my friends and I would always listen to that. They actually introduced me to that record and some of the other Blues Brothers records, and whenever we would see each other in the halls, we would always yell out the way they do in the record, "Rubber Biscuit!" If you've never seen the classic Saturday Night Live performances from like 1978, I would highly recommend you check those out if you've already seen the movie. And Briefcase Full of Blues, that was a great Blues Brothers record. So in a weird way, we actually have John Belushi coming down to basically poach talent for National Lampoons as being the whole reason that we even have the Blues Brothers, and thanks to Howard Shore for naming him. And I believe the debut song that the Blues Brothers did on Saturday Night Live was Hey Bartender. Now that's the way you actually enter these days over here. Now I tried calling for 3 days because I was told I could probably get in here, and I couldn't get anybody to call me back. So if I'm ever able to get in there for a concert, there is actually something else that I want to vlog here. I'll show the insides then, but I'm gonna match up inside here. You've probably already seen as I was doing this vlog some of the classic shots from inside that ballroom. Look over there at that artwork on the wall. It's a barcode with a dog peeing on the side. Well, unfortunately we know that Jake Blues, John Belushi, passed away in the early 80s, so not too long after the movie. So we would never get a second movie, and that would pretty much be the end of that incarnation of the Blues Brothers. Dan Aykroyd, Elwood Blues, would keep it alive in various incarnations, mainly in tribute over the years, but none would be anywhere near as good as the original two. And there's poor Argyle. Good grief, man. You look like you got into a bar fight and got stitched up by somebody in the back room. Holy Moses. Argyle, when I get back from Italy, we gotta talk about your lifestyle. I am proud to say, no alcohol bottles. Well, get a good last view of the Hollywood sign. That's probably the last we'll see of it for quite a while, guys. And the last of that, too. Well, good evening, Lionhearts. Thank you for watching and supporting my daily vlog. Tomorrow we will depart and arrive in Italy. Have a great night, no layovers. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Goodbye.